Figured out. Technology strikes again. I'll call to order the Waxhaw Board of Commissioners special meeting 10/11/2019. It's 11 o'clock. We have one item on the agenda which centers around the executive search firm RFP responses. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Discussion.
Okay, so, yes, go ahead.
On item B for business, the second one where it says select up to 2 for consideration. Can I just clarification as to what does that mean? Consideration on the sheet or consideration for interview?
Consideration for interviews. That's the way the proposal, the RFP was directed. We said interviews if necessary. So it's up to us to decide what we want to do.
I just want
Yeah.
clarification as to what that actually meant.
Yeah.
That's all. That's my question.
So, and then if needed, we'll take whatever appropriate action there is to move to the next step. So, so we have adopted the agenda. We're okay. All right. So, I personally, I think we owe, if 10 people or 10 firms take the time to respond, I think we owe them a deliberation and a discussion and not necessarily just end with the form, begin with the end in mind. We have to get to who we select, et cetera. And given didn't have anything, I checked with Wendy. What I tried to do, just for discussion purposes, lay out the firms, and unfortunately this is not showing up well, Nick, on the chart, on the screen, but I laid out the firms and I plugged in some variables, cost, pretty definitive. That's factual based qualifications. They're all qualified. There's a little bit of difference. I don't know why it's out of whack, Nick.
Could you reduce it, Nick?
Okay. And then I just, to get the discussion going, put my views in there. They are what they are. They're my views. And based upon some additional actions I took. I spent 4 hours yesterday kind of going through all these and another hour or two this morning. For me personally, I ruled 3 out right from the get-go. Ralph Anderson, they've done it twice. They're a good firm. They have a good form. They were the most expensive. I think it's my personal opinion. It's time for a fresh look. Colin Basinger and Mercer. I know some people at the league and candidates that have personal experience with them, and so the references were mixed. And so for me personally, in talking with them, I ruled those 2 out. The rest of them, as you can see, not as strong, very limited in the North Carolina area. And I settled in personally on development associates. I did so with a follow-up activity. I actually called 3 of the mayors that have used them within the last 2 years, and they spoke very highly. In fact, the mayor of Clayton said it's the best money they've ever spent, and it's the most thorough search they've ever done. And I know one of our staff members has experience with them and speaks very favorably, Mr. Wells. And so for me, I had one clear-cut winner, or clear-cut candidate, and a distant second in Baker Tilly, and the rest fell below. So that's how I got to it. And so I throw that out there to get a discussion going with everybody. And oh yeah, now you give me a color one.
I'll go next.
I throw it out there to just get a discussion going. It's just one person's opinion from a cost, leaving the cost and the qualifications. My one exception is Novak, which has they're a much broader firm, and they have some excellent capabilities that may be of use to Waxhaw down the road. So I thought their resume was very interesting, but with limited experience here. So that's, I just put that up there.
I do have one question on what you put. What did you mean, what did you mean by boilerplate for strategic management?
I thought their presentation was boilerplate. They didn't even they represented us, and it's a nit, but they called us the city of Waxhaw. They didn't talk to the Board of Commissioners. They said your hiring committee. It just appeared and read very boilerplate. So I look at, I've looked at a lot of RFPs over time, and I look for stuff like that, and that was just my perspective as I read it. Doesn't mean that they're not good, and they had, as I said, a little bit of concern. The assessments were extra, their process is fine, their pace was accelerated, and they're very, very strong and predominant in Texas. But that was, I thought, just to go a little bit further, I thought Baker Tilly had an excellent timeline and approach. I think Development Associates did an excellent job of fitting the election cycle very favorably. Get a position defined, they start recruiting, and then transition to the new board with the first set and the second set and the third set. And I was very impressed that they took the time to apply it to the election cycle, which is very, very critical. I was concerned with Slavin Management because their evaluation aspect included things after the hiring process, which concerned me. And again, those are some of the things that, as I went through, certainly not against anybody from the Midwest. I was born and raised there, so what the heck? It's got to be doing something right up there, or not. GovHR is is making more and more progress across North Carolina. I get their weekly notice from them about a number of things. I felt their experience at the high-end level was not as strong, but certainly something, Wendy, you may want to look at as we do director, or the town does director searches, et cetera, in the future. They seem to have a very good process for some of that. So anyway, I'll throw it open to everybody else.
I'll go. I did the same thing. Spent a long time yesterday and last night reading, and some this morning. And the first thing, well, not the first thing, but one of the things that I went through is the salary range, starting with Mercer was 18.5, going all the way through to Ralph Anderson was 35,000. So there's a large range between there. Looking more for North Carolina, not specifically, it has to be North Carolina, but I think the ones that have the experience in North Carolina maybe are more in tune with what we're looking for. I came to a Baker Tilly. I agree with you, Steve, on that. There were some interesting things but I had top two. The Novak Group was my number 2. It's a little higher, or maybe comparable to Development Associates, but I like their 18-year experience. They speak individually to the board, which some of the other ones did too, but in that range. And they developed a 1-year, develop a first-year goals for the manager. And on the development services, that's 18,650. They've got 28 years experience in the business. They use several recruitment methods and screening processes. They meet in person with the applicants, which some of the other ones do, but I think it's really important in one of their screening techniques, which is experienced and would notice a deficiency, especially in the area of communication, which is particularly a need for the new manager coming in, is to have those skills very high skills in communication. So for me, my first choice is Development Associates, with a second choice, kind of Novak. That's where I came in.
One comment, you noticed in some had used assessment tools, and in talking with the three mayors that I talked with on developmental associates, their comment was you have to be careful. You can't mandate that somebody must take the assessment.
Yeah.
And so that's just a word of caution there. They offer the tools. One had a little difficulty with one of the candidates, but they had to be very careful that they did not exclude that candidate because they refused to take the assessment. So that's just one thing to keep in mind as well. So, anybody want to go second? Mr. Wesolek?
Let's go around. So what I looked at was the selection process of how they narrowed it down to who they brought to the board, as well as cost, their placement guarantee, which, I mean, looking back at who we had before, Ralph Anderson, it would, I guess they only have a 1 year. Had they had the 2 year, like some of these others, that maybe would have benefited us. And then I looked more at their portfolio of the positions they placed rather than the state they were in. So that was what I looked at. My top choice was strategic management. I thought their selection process stood out way above anybody else's. And they had the video, they had this first year plan that I liked. I didn't see those among any of the other candidates here. And then my second choice was the Colin Bainziger because of, for some of the similar reasons, I really liked their screening process. My third was Baker Tilly, and fourth was Developmental Associates. I know we weren't supposed to do four, but that was the order that I put mine in. So I guess there's two on my list that both of you had mentioned.
Any discussion, questions? I have to be careful what I say, but I would ask that you strongly consider my comment around Colin Bainziger and Mercer. And
Well, I didn't say Mercer, but.
no, I'm
Oh,
I'm
okay.
saying both. I'm not trying to pick either one. I'm just saying everybody, based upon some feedback that I got. So I'll just leave it at that. Mayor Pro Tem?
Okay. In doing the research, and even when I started with the process and working together with the mayor and Human Resources Director, I went through and calling and looking at a number of firms and calling the league and other current town managers or mayors and speaking regarding firms. Colin Bainziger came up as one firm, Mercer came up as another one, as the mayor has already alluded to, that had somewhat mixed references as to use of those firms. So I did speak with, I think it was Mr. Bainziger, I have to look at my notes, but there was mixed reviews regarding those two firms and using them. So looking at their RFPs and coming back with information from the league and others, I automatically eliminated those two. I know that we have used Ralph Anderson in the past for our past two town managers. Though they come with a good history and record, their cost is higher than everyone else's, if we are looking to move on to do something new or different, then I would be eliminating them as well. Slave and management, I did not think that they gave adequate information. It did seem very limited. I eliminated them as well. And then I came down to strategic management, Baker Tilly, and developmental associates. I looked at Novak as well, which seemed to be a good firm if we were going to consider that as one. But if I had to pick, I would go with Baker Tilly, strategic management, and developmental associates, just based upon review and information of the entire process.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned, all three of us have mentioned Novak. They are quite the broad firm in terms of the organizational side and the strategic planning side, as well as the recruitment. So, very good firm, no questions.
Yeah, they seem to be a good firm, but I don't know that it's a good firm
For
a
this
good fit
task.
for the town manager position, just in conversation with others, that they might be a good fit for recruiting, hiring, moving forward.
Yeah, and as I went through the process on them, they were extremely fast on,
They were very
just
quick.
go through it very quickly.
They were very quick.
Raised a caution there.
Can I just clarify, that order, that is the order that you are?
We'll
Oh,
figure these out.
I didn't,
No order, okay.
no, I'm just saying those would be my top picks.
Commissioner Lee?
My second choice was Baker Tilly. I liked their timeline. I liked the way they laid out their process. I was, excuse me, I was a bit concerned that they didn't have a lot of experience in North Carolina. That's not a deal breaker, but it is something that caught my eye. But I'd say head and shoulders above the rest for me was developmental associates. They were the only ones who addressed the emotional intelligence quotient, the idea that someone can sound great on paper, but in reality may not be the right fit for very specific reasons, having to do with leadership and management style and personality type. So that really stood out to me as the only one who addressed that. And I'm very disturbed to hear the negative comments you've received about Mercer and some of the others. So I take that to heart. I take both of your phone calls and such that you referenced to heart. So yeah, I would say my number one is developmental associates, and my number two is Baker Tilly.
And I want to clarify, and I think I clarify for Mayor Pro Tem as well, it's not so much as negative as much as it caused pause. I don't want to disparage either one of those firms at all, so.
Yeah, it's not to
Just-
say that they are not good firms, but we've just
It may not
received
be right for this.
for this.
Yeah,
We've received
exactly.
mixed reviews.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Birthday Girl?
So taking a look at everything, I took a pros and cons list approach with each one, and I went ahead and kind of ranked mine in order of priority. My number one was developmental associates, and I really liked the way that they had a lot of experience in North Carolina. I appreciated the way my favorite part, my absolute favorite part, and this is the RFP geek in me, was the way that they laid out their scope of work. And I really appreciated the way that they completely laid out the steps, the sub-steps within those steps. For me to be able to see the very detail-oriented way that they're going to walk through this process and who's going to be involved and how that's going to be organized. It was very, 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 very thorough, and I appreciated the level of detail in that. So I also thought that they were the most cost-effective, and I think that being is that we've been through this process, excuse me, a lot. Unfortunately, in the past couple of years, we do need to get the most bang for our tax dollar. So they were my top pick. I did appreciate Baker Tilly They had some cool ideas with the community survey. And they had, the one thing I did have pause with their approach was the video interviews. I feel like we need to have, and it's important for the people who sit here in this group, to have one-on-one interactive, not even one-on-one, but even like face-to-face. You have to see if that person is really going to fit the role. So for me, while technology is wonderful, having an interview that's pre-recorded for me was a challenge, because you lose that ability to interact and see how the applicant responds to what the questions are, and just that response and that interactive nature. So my number one was developmental associates.
Did you have another choice in there that you were looking at as well, besides those two?
Yeah, I also looked, I liked Salvin, and the reasons why I liked them was the on-site with the candidates, the clear project plan and costs that they had outlined. I really liked how in their example of their brochure, they talked about the local economy and talked about the development of the local economy and what was prevalent. I also liked how they did, I think, took a step beyond and they came back and they worked with that board and they worked with the candidate and kind of established a plan of attack, and kind of helped that candidate understand what their roles and responsibilities were going to be. So I thought that was something that was a little bit different from what others were doing. Oh my gosh, I can't even read my own handwriting on the last one. But yeah. So those were my thoughts.
Okay. I think we hopefully can all agree that all the respondents did a pretty darn good job with the RFPs. And Wendy, one of the things we have to do is send a thank you back to all of them for the thoroughness of their response. I thought all of them, I think the board agrees, were thorough. If I got the tally right, we have 4 that put Development Associates as a solid 1. Commissioner Wesolek had them on their list, as did Mayor Pro Tem McMillon. Baker Tilly was on everybody's list, if I did this right. Strategic Management was on 2 lists. So the question is, we seem to have centered in on, if I did this right. If anybody thinks I didn't, I was trying to keep track. We really didn't have anybody around government HR. Novak Consulting had 1 mention, although as an organization alike, Slavin had 1 mention. Colin Basinger had 1 mention. So we seem to have settled in on around a couple. So the question is, do we want to take those 2 and interview? Do we feel strong enough that Development Associates, since a number of 1s, it was on everybody's list, is the leading candidate?
Now, are we going
What would we like to do?
Can we take 2, or since there were 2 people that had a third choice, can we do up to 3? Because
We said we
that
would do
was-
2.
well, on the other day, when you spoke, you said 2 to 3.
I said 2 to 3, whatever.
That's
the
exactly what
preference.
she said at the meeting, 2 to 3, the other day, if I'm correct. Am I correct?
I did say that. I said 2 to 3.
Yes, she said 2 to 3.
I didn't know what you're thinking.
So if we take even 1 more and make it the 2 to 3 to interview, just to get a fair assessment and exactly speak to each of the people, even though they look good on paper, sometimes on paper and what you see in person can also be different when you speak to the people who have written this or who are going to move forward, or if you have questions. I think it's always good to interview and have that ability to speak to them and make sure that what they're saying on paper is exactly what you're getting. So I would like to move forward.
I don't have any problem with the interviews. That's one of the reasons why I went and actually got reference points.
Right, so
So,
I would like to.
Mayor, if I may, the notice did say that we would select two.
we-
Um,
yeah, and we can modify the motion to say we'd like to go to 3. I know what it, that's what I'm dancing around, because two places it said 2, and third,
The person heading it said up to 3.
I was,
well, no, that's not the person heading it. Let's be clear here, the board's heading this,
Well,
and she's
when she
taking
made,
direction from us, so.
she made mention of it at the
I
meeting.
understand, but the board's heading this, so the board will make the decision. So, we can do 2, 3, we can interview all 10 if we will so choose. But, for expediency, it looks like we've ruled out at least 7. Do we agree there?
Yes.
Yes, and I like the idea of the 3 because, like I said, developmental associates was on my list, and the idea of the assessments was what interested me, but as hearing from discussion that may not be allowed to be a mandatory part of the interview process, now I need to maybe rethink some of that, or maybe do a little additional research on that, so I think it would be good to have a third option.
Can I ask a question?
So, I'm not sure how a third option makes it
Well, I
better
mean,
than a second.
well, it just-
But I'm fine with 3. I don't,
When you chose Ralph Anderson the first time, did you interview? Did the board interview?
yes, we did.
Okay.
Yep. We actually took a list of, I don't know how many, and narrowed it down to, the board discussion very similar to this. We narrowed it down to 2 or 3, very similar. It was 2, actually. Because the board at that time made a decision that it gets confusing when you have 3. Two were clear, but we did the interviews and then selected. So, yeah. So, developmental associates was a clear, Baker Tilly was a clear, and I guess strategic management would be the third. Okay. So, do we have consensus on instructing the HR manager to notify those 3 that we would like to interview next week? Are we okay doing interview via Skype, or do we want to do it in person?
I'm okay with Skype.
I'm okay with Skype.
Skype's fine for me.
Skype or in person?
I'm good with
Okay.
Skype.
So you can offer that flexibility to them, Wendy. And then that will dictate where we do it. And do we have any conflicts next week, date-wise?
What are the dates? 15?
14th is a holiday, technically.
It was stated at the meeting the other day, the 15th or the 17th was reserved for the rooms. Is that what
yes, that's
she
correct.
stated?
Tuesday and
She had
Thursday.
reserved
Oh,
the
the
15th or the
rooms.
17th for the meeting room.
Yeah, the only caution I'm throwing is if they have a conflict on any one of those two, but as a board, I don't see any conflicts that we have other than Wednesday afternoon gets into transportation meetings. And I don't see anything else. Monday's a holiday.
Also, the 2x2 at 4 p.m. on Wednesday.
16th.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wednesday afternoon from 2 on, kind of, it gets blown away. So let's try to stick to Tuesday or Thursday, and if somebody must do, then let us know. But if we can get those locked down so we can get the proper meeting notice out for Tuesday, because if we're going to do anything Tuesday, we have to have it out by end of day today.
Can I just say that on Tuesday, earlier in the day would work better for me. I do have a conflict between 3 and 5.
Okay? Anybody else have conflicts during those days?
Tuesday, I'm good up till 5. And on Thursday, I have a doctor's appointment at 10 that I can't cancel.
Okay?
Cancel. Cancel.
So Melody, we go Tuesday, we're actually,
It's pushing it right now.
if you could go and clarify that, and if we'd have to call an emergency meeting. We're within the 48 hour. Is it 48 hours business or is it 48 hours calendar? I believe it's business day, but I may be wrong.
I don't believe that the holidays are counted into that. I'll verify that.
I'm talking about the weekend and two as well.
Right, weekends are not counted into that. I don't
Verify.
believe holidays are, but I can verify.
So we need to let you go so you can go schedule that because we're up against it. Otherwise, we're looking at Wednesday, Thursday, hopefully Thursday, and then,
Thursday afternoon, if any.
Thursday afternoon.
Yeah.
If my morning is a conflict, so.
Yeah.
You're good Thursday afternoon? So, then Thursday afternoon.
Okay, and,
you
okay.
can shoot for Thursday afternoon for all of them? Otherwise, we have it.
That would be nice.
Okay.
That's good. I don't want to draw attention to say that this is an emergency or anything like that.
Right.
And that would be,
Do you want to collect these anyway?
do you need these?
It would be nice. I don't have to, yeah, but it would be nice to have that. If everyone would mark their top three and let me have that.
I didn't, gotta get mine out. I didn't even fill it out. I just went through my notes.
Well, I have your instructions, so don't worry about that. Developmental Associates, Baker Tilly, and Strategic Management.
Right.
Correct? That's all, that's it, that's good.
That's good enough, right?
That's good enough.
All right, throw them away.
Throw 'em away?
Yep.
Okay.
One less record to keep.
That's right.
All right, with that, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.